When we think of World War II, the emphasis is often on tanks, artillery, or the strategic movements of armies across Europe. What is less frequently discussed, even by experienced historians, is how day-to-day survival shaped operational effectiveness. During the Battle of the Ardennes in late 1944, German troops faced severe shortages of rations and supply disruptions caused by dense forests, snow, and Allied interdiction. A largely overlooked aspect of their resilience was the knowledge and practice of foraging. Soldiers relied on edible weeds and wild plants to supplement meagre rations and maintain energy under harsh winter conditions. These improvisations illustrate an important principle. Practical survival skills directly influence endurance and operational capacity. Subscribe to Backyard Wisdom now if you're interested in historically grounded survival strategies drawn from overlooked wartime experience, because this episode explores lessons that remain relevant for both modern bushcraft and historical understanding. The Ardennes is a dense, heavily wooded region with uneven terrain and limited infrastructure, which presented logistical challenges for all forces. Why the Ardennes Forest presented both a hazard and a resource. German troops advancing through or defending this region often faced extended marches, freezing temperatures, and limited food supplies. At the same time, the forest provided a variety of edible plants, many of which could be consumed raw or cooked with minimal preparation. Understanding and exploiting these resources required knowledge of local flora and careful judgment to avoid poisonous species. This duality, hazard and opportunity, shaped how troops approached survival, blending military discipline with improvisation and natural observation. So edible weeds were identified and, incorporated into daily rations. German soldiers often carried these kind of rudimentary guides to local plants, or honestly, just relied on personal experience and knowledge that was shared within their units. Commonly foraged species included things like dandelion leaves, sorrel chickweed, and nettles. These plants were really valued for their vitamin content and, well, their ability to provide calories when conventional rations ran low. Soldiers would often combine foraged greens with small amounts of canned meat, bread, or root vegetables, creating these improvised meals that helped supplement their inadequate rations. Historical accounts indicate that foraging wasn't just haphazard, it was actually a systematic part of daily routines, sometimes carried out under the supervision of experienced soldiers who really understood which plants were safe and nutritious. Understanding seasonal changes was, absolutely critical for effective foraging. During winter, foraging demanded a keen awareness of how growth patterns shifted with the seasons. Although the Ardennes region is quite rich in plant diversity, by late December, many edible species are either dormant or just a lot less palatable, so troops really had to seek out evergreen herbs, hardy roots, or those few plants whose leaves stayed nutritious even after a hard frost. Soldiers would carefully observe differences in soil, sunlight exposure, and moisture to identify the most promising sources of food. This level of attentiveness made sure that the energy gained from foraging was actually greater than the physical effort spent gathering plants. The lesson here is pretty clear. Surviving in any environment depends on recognizing temporal patterns and adapting your methods to local conditions, rather than just relying on a fixed set of knowledge. Foraging did more than just, provide calories. It reinforced a sense of agency and competence in otherwise constrained circumstances. In many ways, it actually supplemented military discipline and morale. In a forest where supply lines were, inconsistent, the ability to identify and gather edible plants gave soldiers confidence and a real, practical sense of purpose. Units often rotated foraging duties, ensuring equitable access to knowledge and resources and reducing the individual risk of exhaustion or exposure. Historical records suggest that soldiers who understood local flora contributed to the collective resilience of the unit. This really illustrates a principle that extends to modern survival. Shared knowledge and coordinated action can, in fact, amplify effectiveness under constrained conditions. Preparation and processing were, absolutely essential to avoid harm. Not all weeds are immediately edible and, improper handling could actually lead to gastrointestinal distress or even poisoning. Soldiers would boil tougher greens, remove those bitter stalks, and in some cases, they fermented or dried plants for longer storage. These preparation techniques really emphasize careful attention to detail and risk management. The underlying principle is still so enduring. Successful foraging requires both identification and proper treatment of resources, highlighting that intersection of observational skill, manual labor, and health awareness in survival practices. Improvisation, extended well beyond just plants to include other natural resources. In addition to edible weeds, German troops adapted other forest materials to improve their sustenance and survival. Pine needles, for example, were brewed into vitamin-rich infusions. Bark from certain trees was scraped to supplement flour, and seeds from shrubs provided some much-needed extra calories. These innovations really show that survival often depends on viewing the environment holistically, recognizing the potential of multiple resources and, honestly, integrating them into daily routines. The interplay of improvisation and careful observation was absolutely critical in determining both short-term survival and operational efficiency. Why bushcraft skills influenced small unit effectiveness. Units that mastered foraging and bushcraft could operate longer without resupply, navigate challenging terrain more efficiently, and maintain energy for combat operations. Soldiers who understood natural shelters, fire building with limited materials, and water purification complemented their plant-based knowledge, enhancing their resilience. The Ardennes campaign illustrates that operational success is influenced as much by survival competence as by conventional tactics. The ability to endure environmental stress directly affects combat readiness. Discipline and planning, were absolutely essential for sustainable foraging practices. Random or excessive harvesting could easily deplete local resources and, create unnecessary risk. Historical evidence shows that disciplined units actually planned their foraging activities, sometimes even designating specific areas for collection and monitoring the availability of plants over time. By managing resources sustainably, soldiers were able to maintain a reliable supplement to their rations throughout extended operations. This principle really translates directly to modern survival and bushcraft practice. Long-term resilience requires foresight, careful resource management, and, of course, coordination. Observing the local ecology really improved decision-making under stress. Knowledge of seasonal growth, soil conditions, and plant behavior, all of that informed daily decision-making. Soldiers would observe frost patterns, sunlight exposure, and microhabitats to locate viable plants quickly and efficiently. The ability to interpret environmental cues minimized wasted effort and reduced exposure to enemy patrols. In modern survival contexts, this really underscores the value of acute observation and adaptive reasoning. Understanding the environment enhances both efficiency and safety. The experience in the Ardennes, really shaped later military doctrine in a significant way. After the war, military manuals and survival guides began to draw directly from these hard-learned lessons, placing greater emphasis on foraging, bushcraft, and environmental awareness as absolutely essential to operational sustainability. The example set in the Ardennes made it clear that, logistical planning by itself just isn't enough in tough terrain. Soldiers who could make use of natural resources effectively, honestly, gained a real tactical advantage. These lessons, even today, are just as relevant for civilian preparedness, bushcraft education, and emergency planning. They really show the lasting value of those historical survival practices. As we come to a close, it's important to reflect on why studying historical survival methods still matters. The foraging practices of German troops in the Ardennes, for example, reveal this really crucial intersection of necessity, knowledge, and, improvisation. These stories remind us, honestly, that survival in extreme circumstances is just as much about intelligence and observation as it is about sheer physical endurance. Taking the time to study these techniques, actually enriches our understanding of historical resilience, human adaptability, and practical problem solving under pressure. And beyond just historical insight, these lessons are still relevant today for anyone wanting to deepen their knowledge of bushcraft, foraging, or nature-based preparedness. So if you found this exploration valuable, don't forget to subscribe to Backyard Wisdom for more in-depth historical analysis and practical lessons from overlooked wartime practices. And hey, sharing this video helps make sure that knowledge developed under extreme conditions keeps informing modern resilience, resourcefulness, and preparedness.